Well, good day, everybody. Welcome to the Lifetime Training Podcast. I am super excited to bring you today the founder and executive vice president of a product called UCAN. Now, again, hold your horses here because this is a carb that doesn't act like a carb. And it was designed, originally, and I'll have him go into the story, for a young kid that basically had a very rare disease, estimated only 3,000 people, called glycogen storage disease type 1A. And basically what this thing is allowed, everybody to do now is to eat those carbs and get that energy without crashing, without having the insulin spike, without having a diabetes risk. So I can't wait to talk to you guys about this, or more specifically, have Peter talk to you about it. So Peter Kaufman, thank you so much for jumping on.
Hey, thanks, Jason. I'm really pleased that you invited me. Thank you.
Thank you. And, obviously I've been using UCAN for many years, but it is just a confusing product when people look at the label and they look at it, it's a carb. And, in the world that, carbs are good, carbs are bad, not to get into that, but, at the end of the day, I'd love for you to go into the story and talk to us about, how did we identify this? And then what were the unintended consequences and where it's brought us today?
Yeah, and remind me as we get into this to tell you how it's made, because not only is it a carb, which a lot of people, of course, carbs aren't good, but it's derived from corn. So I need to do a little explaining. As
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so like you said, we have a carbohydrate in our products that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. We're the only ones that have it. It's completely unique. And the reason it's unique is because we developed it for a very specific purpose. And we've actually named it. It's called Super Starch, and we named it because we're the ones that have it. Originally, it was developed only for the purpose, and it's the only reason we founded the company. There are four of us that were founders of the company, and I'm one of them, was to help children with a very rare disease that you mentioned, glycogen storage disease. There are 9 types. One of my co-founder's sons, Jonah, has type 1A. The most common of the glycogen storage diseases, but still extremely rare. Anyway, to keep the story relatively short, in 2009, when Jonah was 7 years old, our Super Starch allowed he and his parents to sleep through the night for the first time in his life. It gave him 8 hours of a livable level of blood sugar to sleep through the night. Previous to that, with his disease, the kids had to, from birth, be fed, and then as they get older, eat plain cornstarch that you buy in the supermarket to bake into a cake 8 to 10 times a day. And if they miss one dose, they don't live. They go into hypoglycemic shock and can die. So they never miss a dose. So this was what we set out to do. In fact, we set out originally to try and cure his disease. At the very, very start of the company, we were a biotech startup, but we realized relatively soon that we weren't going to be able to cure the disease. So we focused more on helping the family be better off by managing it. And our Super Starch is what, as I said, enabled them to much better manage his disease.
Wow. And, so can you go into, obviously you talked, it's corn, it's a carb, those are things that are like voodoo in the health and fitness industry right now. And even for health in a lot of cases. So would you mind now, going into and diving into, how did it come to fruition? And then, how is it being used now?
Yeah. So remember I told you the kids were spending their lives and their families were spending their lives feeding them plain cornstarch. So our mission became one of trying to find a better carb that would enable Jonah to live longer between those feedings of carbohydrate. So everything was explored, all kinds of carbs, every grain you could think of, wheats and rice and tapiocas and maises, resistant starches. We talked to researchers out in the Corn Belt. We talked to research in the Midwest. We talked to the World Health Organization. Ultimately, what we found was that a specific type of non-GMO corn treated with a very specific cooking process that's now patented across the world was what created what we now call Super Starch. And as I said, enabled Jonah to go 8 hours. So it took a while. We started this company in 2006. Our first product wasn't released until 2010. And in fact, there was research before we even started the company. But what we started to wonder about a year before Jonah slept through the night in 2009 was, would this have important implications for folks and people that didn't have Jonah's disease? So we first tested it on ourselves. We got a group of about 20 people together. tested it on ourselves, first without exercise. We sit in a room, we prick our fingers and check our blood sugar using the super starch versus
sounds like a great
carbs.
time.
Yeah, I never liked it as much as everybody else. But yeah, so we did that for a year. And eventually, after doing it without exercise for 3-hour bouts, for 7-hour bouts, under the direction of somebody from the USDA who had worked on human trials for 30 years. She gave us some direction on how to conduct this kind of internal clinical trial. So at least we'd be able to have good data that we would be able to believe and trust. And then we had a researcher, Dr. Jeff Volek, ironically, one of the top low carb researchers, keto guys in the country, perhaps the world, for the last 20 years, headed the science advisory board for Atkins for over 20 years, who has now since back in 2006 or 7 or 8 been our chief science advisor. So there's a lot of things about our company that are counterintuitive, but always actually quite authentic, which is what I kind of really like best about our company. You know, we didn't start out to create a sports nutrition product. We were helping children with a disease. And then our head science advisor ended up joining us because of the implications he felt the super starch had for diabetes.
Wow.
You know, we didn't just pay him to join us and he was some sports nutrition guy.
Yeah.
And in fact, a low carb guy, and we're a carb. But in any case, we then got on exercise bikes and continued to test ourselves. And the data was definitely interesting enough that we funded a clinical trial at the University of Oklahoma. And that really proved two things. One, that your blood sugar stays remarkably stable. And two, that there's almost no insulin response to the super starch. And that, by the way, is because when you don't have a spike in your blood sugar, the pancreas doesn't see anything to react to. So it doesn't produce insulin. So there's almost no insulin response to our super starch. We can go into the implications of both those things in a minute. But we sent samples then, again, before this was a product, we sent samples out to some top sports dietitians, pro and college teams, a couple of Olympic dietitians, strength and conditioning coaches at pro and college teams to try with their athletes. And they gave us quite remarkable feedback that ultimately led us to launch in sports. We've now got
Before we
half the NFL teams. Sorry?
Oh, no, go ahead.
More than half the NFL teams are buying UCAN. I think we're up to 39 pro teams between NFL, NBA, NHL that are buying the product. We've got over 400 college teams at about 70 schools that buy it. We don't give it to anybody. Some other companies give away their sports nutrition. They all buy it. So that's been very successful. We're also pretty well known. I mean, we're not well known in any particular circles, frankly, but still kind of under the radar. But
and before we dive into, I mean, there's a lot more we'll get into, and I want you to get into. But you know, a common question that I've heard that I want to clarify is the difference between a super starch and a resistant starch. You know, if you could explain that and why, because I've heard it, you know, over the years. Oh, well, yeah, I take something similar to UCAN. Well, similar isn't it. So if you wouldn't mind addressing that and what is the difference and, you know, again, how your product reacts differently than the others.
Yeah. So we are similar to a resistant starch in that the super starch resists digestion, but resistant starches don't break down. They pass through as fibers. Our super starch breaks down virtually completely. So it slowly breaks down, but it breaks down virtually completely. And that's what Jonah needed to go 8 hours, right? It had to be something that would very slowly break down, but it had to virtually, you know, almost completely break down or completely break down to give him the 8 hours that it did. And that all goes to our patented cooking process and the way we process that non-GMO corn. First, completely natural process. The premise up front was don't do it unless it could be natural, because the only intended users were children and babies with a disease.
Yeah.
So no enzymes, no chemicals. It's why it took so long. It took almost 8 hours to fully develop and scale for commercial purposes this cooking process of this specific type of corn. All we treat it with is water and heat. It's a really specific process. As I told you, it took a long time to figure it out. It's subtle, but that's it. It's completely natural. You're cooking corn. But the molecule does change over time with the way we cook it. It becomes, as I say, resistant to digestion, breaks down slowly, releases glucose, blood sugar directly into the bloodstream, never going through the liver, where the children with Jonah's disease have their problem. They can't convert glycogen back to glucose. So if it goes through their liver and gets stored as glycogen, as it does for them, as it would for you and me, they can't pull it back out to fuel their bodies. This breaks down the superstarch, goes directly to the bloodstream, but very slowly and steadily. And it gives you great energy for hours because it breaks down slowly.
And so again, we've got different audience levels. We've got trainers, health enthusiasts, maybe some just jumping on. And can you now explain, obviously I know that, or I believe that one of the first major athletes that, jumped on this was Meb, I believe. And there's nobody better in the world in endurance running than he was. And, I guess, how did that happen? Like, how did he find out about it? And then, obviously it went from there to now advancing. And I'd love for you to talk, we could stay on the athlete side of it, but then I want to talk about how the general population, especially with everything that's happening nowadays with metabolic disease and insulin resistance and diabetes, and, and how we can reach that crew that, want health and or weight loss using this product.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a little more about the athlete story and Meb, and then we feel it's actually far more important in reality than improving performance, improving performance in people's lives and improving their metabolic health and improving their diets. So I want to get into how lifetime clients have used it with their personal trainers recommending it, because that's where we actually learned from you guys, from Lifetime, on how this was important for the everyday individual.
And before you get into that's one thing out there too, whether it's trainers at Lifetime or not. We were one of the very first adapters, I believe, to really bring this and educate the trainers on the value that this has with the general population of the clients. And I can't thank you enough for that. And, obviously you've been giving us education for a long time. So I want to thank you and give you props for that as well.
Well, it's nice of you to thank me, but I actually thank Lifetime and all the trainers and you.
Yeah.
So the athlete story, after it got to those sports dietitians and strength and conditioning coaches, it's the word spread, right? So one of the Olympic dietitians we gave it to another Olympic dietitian, Dr. Krista Austin. The one we gave it to was Bob Seebahar. He was the Olympic dietitian for the U.S. triathlon team at the time. And by the way, he had come from University of Florida, where he'd been the head sports dietitian when the Gators won the basketball and football national championships. So he had both perspectives, right? The team sport athlete perspective, and then the endurance athlete perspective with the tri-team at U.S. Olympic Committee. So, and Bob, by the way, is the one who first encouraged us to go into sports. This was way back, 2007. He said, this is going to change the way athletes view nutrition and change my profession. Wow. And that led us to launch in sports. He gave it to a dietitian that was Meb's dietitian. So Meb started using it 3 weeks before he won the New York Marathon in 2009, before it was a product. And then there was a team that, I don't like to mention too many team names, but they've played in a number of Super Bowls that started using it as well before it was a product. I literally delivered to them white powder in plastic bags, and they used it. That's a true story. But
it's funny too.
I won't name them. But we've had teams, by the way. Again, it's unfortunate we're still under the radar, but that goes to this issue of needing some education because we're not obvious. Mm-hmm. But so the sales are kind of influenced and slow. But we've had teams on UCAN win every major college and basketball championship in football, basketball, hockey. The only thing we haven't won is the men's Frozen Four, and that's because Yale upset Quinnipiac University 4 or 5 or 6 years ago when Quinnipiac was favored to win, and we would have had every major championship, male and female. But so it did well, with the athletes and the teams and endurance. We've had more recently Tim O'Donnell. The last Kona that was held, because there was none in 2020, in 2019. He finished second at Kona, first American to go under 8 hours. And he did it. He had started using UCAN 4 months before he achieved that at age 39. So we've got lots of just wonderful stories like that. If I name the top athletes that we know use the product, it would kind of blow your mind. But again, we don't sponsor teams and athletes too often, so we can't do that. But then what happened was in 2012, I was introduced to Lifetime by Dr. Jeff Bullock, who's doing some consulting for Lifetime. And Lifetime put it on the shelves at the end of 2012. And this became our best learning experience because Lifetime personal trainers started recommending it, virtually instructing their clients to use it as a tool, both for pre-exercise before they came to see him 3 times a week. And they told them to use it in their daily diets at least once a day to replace the least healthy carbs in their diets, right? So this became, I'll say it, the runners that we had previously, not very good customers at all. They would use it for their long Saturday runs. Yeah. But at Lifetime, we started seeing personal training clients using this 10 times a week.
Mm.
And it really opened our eyes. They were telling me, use it before you come to see me 3 times a week. You'll have a better second half of your workout, because when your blood sugar doesn't drop, your energy won't drop. They said you won't be starving at the end of the workout and eat twice as many calories as you just burned off with me, which is quite self-defeating when one of the primary reasons you came to see me was to drop a few pounds, because you won't be starving. When your blood sugar doesn't drop, your brain doesn't tell your body sugar's low. You need to eat again. So you don't get those cravings from the carbohydrate crash, because there is no carbohydrate crash. And then the third thing they told them was, because there's almost no insulin response to the super starch, instead of having a Cliff Bar or a Kind Bar, certainly a sports drink, even a banana, 25 grams of sugar, before you come to see me, have a UCAN bar or a UCAN shake. You won't get the insulin response you would get from the glucose blood sugar spike from those other things, because insulin not only brings blood sugar down when it goes up, it regulates blood sugar, but it's also one of the most potent hormones in the body, and it's a storage hormone telling the body to store fat.
Yep.
If you have UCAN before that workout, you will burn on average about 50% more fat calories during the workout than if you have those simple carbs that shut down that fat burning that your body would normally like to do, but it can't, because the insulin suppresses that ability to use fat calories as your fuel source. So the third thing the traders tell the clients is, use UCAN before you work out with me. It'll take some time, but I can change your body. I can improve your body composition more quickly, because you'll be burning more fat while you're putting on muscle and getting in better shape. And then importantly, they told them, use it once a day at least to replace the least healthy carbs in your diet. If you're having cereal, bagels, oatmeal for breakfast, consider a healthy UCAN shake. Want to have a couple of eggs with it? All power to you. Eggs don't spike your blood sugar. You won't be hungry through lunch for the next 5 hours. You won't feel like you need a snack at 10:30, and you'll feel good, steady energy to your body and to your brain. Unless you're in ketosis, glucose is the only thing feeding your brain. Blood sugar feeds your brain. They tell them 3:07 in the afternoon, instead of reaching for a Cliff Bar or a Kind Bar as your snack, because you're getting to that peak of hunger and fatigue at work, reach for a steady blood sugar UCAN bar. You'll feel great at 5 o'clock. A couple hours later, you won't go home tired and hungry because you suffered that carb crash, that sugar crash. You'll actually come see me, a personal trainer. It helps with retention, we were told by a few people.
Wow.
Or nighttime, hour after dinner, if you're a snacker at night, have a dessert shake, turn the UCAN powder into dessert shake, have one of their bars. You won't feel like you need to eat at night. I took my own advice. I was admittedly out of control at night. I was at my highest weight of my life. My daughter made brownies, half gone by the morning. Class didn't get them. And because I worked late, I worked till 1 in the morning most nights. So I had this 5-hour window of just eating junk. I did the UCAN dessert shake at night and lost 28 pounds in 4 months. But I was literally cutting out 600-700 calories of junk, replacing it with a shake. It was a 300-calorie shake, but it didn't spike my blood sugar. It let me burn fat. So that was a lot, but that's why Lifetime became so important to us from a learning perspective.
Yeah.
How this could be so important and helpful to people to improve their metabolic health as a tool to improve their diets, just to help the average individual.
Well, and it's just amazing when you think through everything that we've talked about in the story of it, starting from basically keeping a family sane through a disease to keep a kid alive through the night, to all of a sudden now, oh, it's great for performance. Oh, it's great for weight loss. Oh, it's great for health. And it's like, well, how can it do all that? Well, here you go. So, it's just amazing. So if you wouldn't mind diving into, obviously there's different products that you have to offer. There's the bars now, there's the can, what could somebody expect, and how have you seen it best used? I know when I mixed it in a blender, I didn't care for it quite as much, just because the cornstarch got real thick if you didn't like that thicky. So, I liked it more in a shaker. But what tips can you give and explain too, because it is a different texture, right? It's a cornstarch. So if you wouldn't mind diving into the uses and best ways that you found it to be used.
Yeah. So I think of it by, kind of use case, right? Category of user. For athletes, all those college athletes and the pro athletes, the most common way for them to use it is to take one of our energy powders without protein, and they shake it. Sometimes they'll blend it, big batches for the athletes and pour it into cups, but they'll often use a shaker bottle, give each athlete a shaker bottle. They'll shake up a scoop with cold water. You got to shake it kind of violently. It doesn't dissolve, but it all disperses. If we sell it, by the way, plain, and then we sell it in flavors. The plain has nothing in it but the super starch. You can add that to any shake that you like. You can add it to your yogurt. You can do what you like with it. If you took the plain and put it in 8 to 10 ounces of water and shook it up, it would sink pretty quickly. The flavored versions, we add a half a gram of xanthan gum. Doesn't affect the nutritional facts at all. Doesn't impact the nutrition characteristics, but it stops it from sinking so quickly. Anyway, you shake it up pretty violently for 15 seconds. You drink it all down at once, and then it slowly time releases into the body as you need it. 100 to 150 calories generally lasts anywhere from 2 to 3 hours of intense exercise, and that includes linemen that are 340 pounds. So,
and you said again to take it about, you said an hour before or a half hour before?
30 to 60 minutes before.
Okay.
Because it's slowly absorbed by the body. It slowly breaks down and digests. You know, we have those college athletes that roll out of bed, they get into the weight room 5 minutes after they woke up. They would be given it coming in, and it does take 20 or 30 minutes to start getting into the bloodstream. But you know, you're stretching, you're warming up. You don't need it. You don't need energy per se at the beginning of your workout. You need it at the end of the workout when you're starting to get fatigued and you're starting. You think about when I have the conversations with those strength coaches. I say, think about the last 20 or 30 minutes of every workout or practice being significantly higher quality because the energy level is just nice and steady at the end. And in fact, think about the injuries you might prevent. Right. You get down in your focus and your energy and you get fatigued and you roll your ankle or you screw up your shoulder. Mm-hmm. So there's all kinds of interesting implications for it in sports.
Well, and one of the questions I have too is, can you explain the type of feeling? Because obviously there's no caffeine in this. So there's no energy given through caffeine and there's no crash also, right? But obviously people know what that caffeine energy feels like. And this is different. And I think the expectation, some people, I don't feel any different. Well, it depends on a couple of things, that I would love for you to go into. Is it the length? Is it the intensity? Is it both? So people could understand, is it a one-time thing and they should feel energy, or is it also something that needs to build up over time?
So you take it up front, you let it time release, and you just feel steady the whole time. Now that may not be so noticeable at the beginning, but at the end, when you notice you just don't feel as fatigued at the end of your workout, that's when you know you really had the effect, and you don't feel as hungry for those that are, again, just trying to drop some pounds while they're working out. Not necessarily. Sometimes it is, but not necessarily as important to some college and pro athletes. They may not be looking to lose weight. They are looking to put on mass and have it be more muscle than fat. So that insulin effect that I described before, where you're burning fat while you're putting on mass, is important to a lot of those athletes. In any case, it's a steady feeling. So what I usually tell athletes to do, and I really tell anybody to do, is use it for a few times, maybe a week, before your workouts. Don't use it the following week. You don't miss it, you don't need it. And very often, especially the more athletic you are, to not feel the fatigue at the end is extremely noticeable right the first workout. I've had some very strong reactions. But if you don't really notice it, you'll notice when you miss it, virtually all the time, almost everybody. Often when people do use it, that first few days or week, I'd say, hey, how'd you feel? How was it? It was all right. I didn't feel too much, but I just didn't feel, kind of tired, and I wasn't starving at the end. I said, well, that's it, right? That's it. That's the feeling. But it's subtle, right? It's not a rush. It's not like a pre-workout. Mm-hmm. You have to cycle off pre-workouts every once in a while. Yeah. We've had trainers at Lifetime Fitness tell us that when they cycled off, they never went back, right? Because they would mix the UCAN with their pre-workout, by the way, and you don't get a crash that you often get with a pre-workout. So it can be helpful that way. But often when they cycle off and they would just keep using the UCAN, they wouldn't feel they had to go back. A lot of people don't like the jittery feeling you get. And if the steady energy feeling is like just kind of a remarkable change, it's a really great, great feeling.
Awesome.
Just going back to the products, right? So the pre-workout energy powder is ideal before workouts. It's the best thing you can use. It's the way to get the most super starch calories in the most concentrated way. You get 100 calories, you're getting 25 or 30 grams of super starch, depending upon the flavor and how much flavor is added.
Yep.
But then we have it in our bars, and our bars you're getting less, right? And there's other ingredients in bars. So where our powders and our super starch generally doesn't bother people's stomachs, it is some people do find it chalky, so they have to get a little used to it, right? And many people, though, will blend it in a shake with ice, maybe some other ingredients, and then they don't find that chalkiness because the shake, as you actually pointed out, is going to be thicker.
Yeah.
But most people don't complain. We've managed to come up with flavors where it doesn't seem as chalky. but some have to get used to it. In any case, the bars have about half that amount of super starch in a bar. You can use it certainly for an hour up to an hour and a half workout, but if you're going longer, certainly for longer workouts, you want to get the powders and get the more concentrated way of getting it.
Got it.
And then we have a complementary product. It's UCAN Hydrate, just to mention it. It doesn't have our super starch, doesn't make us unique. Our super starch makes us unique in the world. Nobody else has it.
Yep.
But the Hydrate is just a really nice mix. It was designed by Bob Seebohar, the Olympic dietitian. The mix of electrolytes exactly matches the ratio of electrolytes in average sweat with a little extra magnesium, because almost everybody is magnesium deficient.
Yep.
And it's got 0 calories. We say you don't
Awesome.
need extra calories if you have the super starch.
Yep.
So that's a complementary product for us.
Awesome.
And I'll mention one other thing.
Yeah.
It's being launched next week or later this week. It's our new granola. Really cool product for the everyday user, the person that's looking for a healthy, low to no sugar snack, right? It's got very low sugar, 3 grams in a serving. It's all grain free, nuts and seeds combined with super starch, which I can't say is grain free because it's derived from corn. But 25% of the content of that is super starch, as much as is in our bars.
Yeah.
And again, it has that same help in terms of a healthy snack, very low sugar, no spike and crash. And then it helps, with satiety, and it just helps you not be hungry longer.
Love
it's
that.
A great snack. Chocolate, vanilla, really healthy, and it tastes great.
Yeah. And, one of the things I want to go back to, and, and thanks for giving kind of the whole, spectrum of products. And I want to dive in, and we'll give people, access. Obviously at Lifetime, we have it there or online, but if you're not Lifetime, where can you get it? And we'll put those links in the body of the podcast. But we talked offline about some things that you did with some soccer teams. And I love for you to go through those studies that were done and what was the outcome through soccer teams. And then obviously you said some other people that were using it, given that little bit extra boost.
Yeah. So I appreciate you reminding me. So that goes to it goes to another thing that I love about our company. And I said it before, that we're very authentic, right? We didn't set out to create a sports nutrition product. We're helping kids with a disease. The other thing that makes us authentic, I believe, is when a company like ours, a nutrition company, wants to make a claim, they go out and they fund a clinical trial, more often than not at a private institution, because if you fund it at a university, at a private institution, if you don't like the results, they won't publish the results. If you go to a university, they have the right to publish the results whether you like it or not. That's why our first study at the University of Oklahoma, when we were deciding for ourselves, if we were going to fund this company ourselves, invite our friends and family to initially invest in it, et cetera, and put our time into it, we didn't want to do nutrition. We already knew this helped Jonah, unless it really worked. So we said, let's go to university, because it'll be more authentic, it'll be more objective. And if it doesn't work, we don't care if they fund the result, if they publish the results, because we're not going to proceed.
Yep.
Well, since then, there have been several studies done. It wasn't with soccer teams per se, but there was one study done at the University of Western Ontario by Dr. Pete Lemon. Really interesting guy, because back in the mid 80s, he did some of the seminal work proving that protein was important for muscle recovery post-exercise. He called our office one day. I spoke to him. He said, I want to do some interesting work on your super starch. I'm fascinated by it. I said, he didn't ask us to fund it. I said, fantastic, go to it. So he did. He simulated a soccer game on a treadmill. So he had the control of a lab setting, but he had the amount of distance you would run during a soccer match, and the starts and stops and the behavior you would have in a soccer match running on a treadmill. And what he found was, at the end of that study, the participants were, I believe it was 6% lower in penalty points shooting and passing than when they had a simple carb before they started. And you could imagine the implications, right, for sports, certainly. Have 6% better accuracy at the end of any kind of a game for a quarterback in an NFL game, for the military out in the field, perhaps, or for anybody just sitting at their desk all day, right, or doing exercise. So that was one. Another one, not funded by us, which I think was even more fascinating, it was to me, was East Carolina University did a study, and they exercised the participants to the point of exhaustion, and then administered 2 cognitive tests. And they performed better on those cognitive tests when they had super starch before they started, UCAN before they started, than if they'd had a simple carb. And really interesting. I mean, these documents exist. I can get it to anybody that's interested in looking at them. I noticed a crazy thing in the middle of that. It was actually a poster presented at the ACSM conference. And one line in there said that ketone levels went up with super starch, which frankly, I don't understand, but it was really interesting. But they chose that study, that protocol, because the DoD right now is in fact funding in the nutrition space. The most funding they're giving is to look at how soldiers can perform better in the field when they're exhausted. So they were looking for DoD funding, and they patterned it that way. We did one other study over the last couple of years that we funded. This was just to prove what we've known for years, is that superstarch is in fact very slowly absorbed. It was an isotope tracer study. And in that one, they attached isotope tracers to the superstarch molecules and watched it move through the body. And the absorption during exercise, not intense, about 60% max VO2, was around 11 to 12 grams per hour of the superstarch, which goes to a 20 to 30 gram dose lasting for anywhere from an hour and a half, sometimes as long as 3 hours, depending upon how good a fat burner you are. The more fat you're burning, or the better you are utilizing fat, and as you train on UCAN, your body gets more used to it and gets better at it, the less exogenous carbohydrate you need coming in from the outside.
Yeah, and
Last thing I'll tell you. Okay,
yeah.
I was going to mention something about ketones, but go. Ketones.
No, that's where I was going next. So have at it.
Oh, so the frustration we've had is that we have a product that can help virtually anyone. Right? You exercise better. It improves your performance in exercise. It improves your performance in your life, unless you're in ketosis, which I'm going to discuss now for a second. The only thing feeding your brain is glucose, blood sugar. You're getting steady energy to the brain. I've had several emails from parents who told me their kids who had attention deficit issues did better in school if they had UCAN for breakfast. And it makes sense to me. I'm not a scientist, but instead of having a bagel or cereal for breakfast for that kid, and the energy to their brain, the glucose literally goes up and down, and they're sitting in math class an hour and a half later, to have a steady flow to the brain makes sense to me. But we also have people that most people tell us they stay in ketosis when they use UCAN. The first one to try it that I know was Dr. Peter Attia. He added 50 grams of superstarch to his keto diet way back in 2011, and then he did an hour-long talk on UCAN, on superstarch, which we appreciated. Stayed in ketosis. So it all has to do with you controlling your insulin to be in ketosis, and we have almost no insulin response. The insulin response to superstarch and UCAN is lower than the insulin response to most proteins. Some people come out of ketosis when they have certain proteins. Yep. Many people stay in, so we're lower than most proteins. So it's, most people tell us they stay in ketosis with superstarch, which goes to how counterintuitive it is, right? That's our frustration. So many people in the world could be helped for their exercise, for their weight loss, like at Lifetime, potentially, although we're not making medical claims and we haven't gone there yet. The diabetes space, you're getting free energy without working the pancreas, and not having that insulin effect and making you more insulin resistant potentially, because there's not much insulin at all from superstarch. But we're counterintuitive. People don't get it. It needs to be explained. And virtually every sale we've had since the beginning of this company 10 years ago has been an influence sale. Yeah. Personal trainers at Lifetime have been key for us. Coaches, dietitians, nutritionists. It could be a friend telling a friend. We've had plenty of word of mouth. Yep. But it's still a slow building process in terms of getting the word out. Yeah. I hear you
a ton there. So to kind of recap some things that I think I want to go back and just highlight is, you mentioned that there's, really the best ways to use it. And, one of the things was, exercise for steady state, and to, not get hungry later on, daily use for steady energy, again, with a weight loss goal. And then obviously the ease and enhanced time restricted eating and fasting. Would you talk about the what you found out, or how it's been used from a fasting standpoint? That's obviously a big thing right now. And a lot of people are fasting, the 16 hours or whichever, sometimes male, female, slightly different. But before you get in, without getting into the details of that, how is this, being able to use it, and when should you use it, and what type? Probably the bar might not be the best way versus the powder, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's good. I'm glad you asked me, because I don't know how long ago, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I thought this would be the ultimate product for Ramadan, where you can't eat during the day. You have a UCAN in the morning, and it helps you get through your day. The best example is me, because what I've been doing during work at home times the last 9 months is I've been eating in a restricted window myself. So I don't eat before noon. I have a UCAN shake we have some products also with protein. They're not at Lifetime because Lifetime has its own protein. But in any case, I take our product with protein, our powder with protein. I blend it into a shake with a bunch of peanut butter powder and unsweetened almond milk, and I either do a quarter cup of blueberries, they're low glycemic, or I throw spinach in my shake. I don't even like spinach, but it makes it creamy. It doesn't affect the shake. And I eat that. I have that between 12 and 1. Okay. And then I don't eat till dinner. So I'm just not hungry, right? And I'm doing great, working and focusing and having good concentration. And then I eat, pretty regular dinner, not high carbs, but a regular dinner. And then since I still work late, if I'm hungry after dinner, I have a UCAN bar, 8, 9, 10 o'clock. And that, I don't always need it, but sometimes I do that. So it's ideal, right? It just helps you. I just described exactly why I use it on a restricted window diet. I'm just not hungry during those several hours of the 8 or so that I'm limiting myself to, helping control my hunger.
Yeah. And then that's something that I've seen too with people that are on it, even myself trying it, is, you do the fast and then, sometimes you get cranky or agitated because your blood sugar is dropping. And so this is that perfect window to be able to add that in and just, again, live a healthier, happier kind of life through whatever it is that you're trying to do to lose weight, or get to be more healthy. Well,
it also keeps me out of my, I don't have cravings, right? So I'm not going into my pantry since I'm stuck at home. And I'll tell you, one other guy, I can't name him, but there's an NFL quarterback who told me this was a game changer for him, and it had to do with a restricted window. He doesn't eat during the day. He eats dinner, and that's it. Well, his frustration was that on game day, he didn't like to go into a game on an empty stomach. And at the same time, he wanted to fast during the day, during his week when he was training. Yeah. So he said UCAN was a game changer because he started using it once before his workouts during the week, and then he consistently stayed with that regimen and used it before his games on NFL game day, and so he loved it for that reason. So another good example.
That's awesome. Well, you've shared a ton, and I can't thank you enough. And a lot of stories, but those stories are what really usually resonate the message. So I will ask, when we're done here, I guess really right now, what are the places, obviously Lifetime has it, and you can get it online. We'll have the links, but I know I've seen it in Sprouts out here, is a grocery store, but what other areas or places? Is it Whole Foods? Is it, where can you get it if obviously they don't have access to a Lifetime?
Yeah. So in fact, we're not on many shelves. We're in about 350 or 400 running and cycling and triathlon stores because that's a consultative selling environment. Yep. We pulled ourselves off the shelf at Sprouts, and we did that.
Okay.
Because the front of a package, we just can't get the message across on why this is different and get people to believe it. Yep. Sitting on a shelf, front of package. So our except for selling direct to pro and college teams, those 350 or so endurance stores, and directly to Lifetime Fitness, we're all direct to consumer, either on Amazon or our own store.
Got it. Okay.
And which is why, again, I hope this gets out to millions of people, Jason. I hope this podcast goes viral and global. Not me, but just in general.
Yep.
Because we need to educate people, and that's why we have an affiliate program. We sign up fitness professionals to be part of our affiliate program all the time. Yep. We just need people that have an interest in getting the word out. And, the affiliate program helps because then they're getting some benefit from it financially.
Well, it is a game changer in, all ways, whether you're playing a game of sport or you're playing the game of life. And I can't thank you for all the horsepower and time and energy and just belief and thought that you and the rest of the team have been able to create this. So anything else that you want to share with the audience before we go? Because, this has been fantastic and can't thank you enough.
Yeah, everybody should, do what I said before. Try it yourselves. Try it for a week of workouts before then don't use it for a week. That's the way to trial it. And then other than that, I just want to thank you. You took the interest because you get it. And I just wish you the best of luck on your next million downloads.
Please.
And,
appreciate it.
This is great. I appreciate the platform and I appreciate you, Jason. Thanks so much.
All right, man. Well, you have a great day, Peter, and look forward to, seeing more and hearing more stories of how this thing has changed people's lives.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care.
Take care.